In tonight's stories, obsession and madness spill into reality. A jealous lover's delusion ends in murder, and a mind split in two. A scarecrow in a lonely field begins to move like the father who built it. A smiling cartoon dog crawls out of a screen, still hungry for an audience. And a medical intern discovers peace only in the taste of his own blood. 4 tales of desire, decay, and the horrors we create for ourselves. Welcome to Nightmare Proof, where true horror comes alive. Here, you'll hear real stories of the strange, the disturbing, and the unexplainable. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to face the darkness. It's not you, it's me. My name is Elizabeth, and this is how I decided to cut my boyfriend out of my life forever. Me and my boyfriend. Michael has been together for about 5 months now, and I think he's having an affair behind my back. I really hope this is not the case, because I don't know what I would do if this is true. But looking back, Michael hasn't been the best boyfriend. Michael and I first met each other on social media, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but it was through OnlyFans. I only post nude pictures on my account, and that's about it. Michael always sent the most money to my page, and one thing led to another. I messaged Michael to come visit me. When Michael arrived at my home, it was love at first sight. We've been intimate countless of times, which always ends with me having tears of unknown bliss. But as the weeks went on, Michael started to change into a totally different person. I tried to calm Michael down, but he always verbally abused me by saying that I'm nothing but a worthless whore who gets naked for money, and I don't care about how it makes him feel when he is deeply in love with me. Then, Michael punched a hole in the wall and would go somewhere to be alone. I want to end the relationship, but I love Michael so much, so I just resort to cutting myself just to make pain go away. One day, my friend Stacy came over to see how I'm doing. I told her that I've been better, but it's just one of those days. Stacy then asked me why I'm messing with my arm. I told Stacy it was nothing, but she's so persistent, she sees the cuts on my arm. Stacy asked me if Michael did this. Then I told her that I did it, just so I can cope with the verbal abuse he spews at me. But I told Stacy that Michael was just going through a lot, and he was just having a hard time letting go the thoughts of his previous girlfriend cheating on him. Stacy then told me that Michael doesn't care about me because he's been seeing another woman behind my back. My heart dropped when Stacy told me this news. Stacy told me that it was going to be okay and I can move in with her to get away from him. Then, all of a sudden, Michael stabbed Stacy multiple times and then sliced her neck. As Stacy was lying dead, Michael looked at me and I started running. As I ran to Michael's closet, I found his handgun. As I aimed the gun at Michael, he tells me to stop, and I don't have to do this. Then Michael said that you're not just killing me, you're killing us both. Michael then showed me a picture of his previous girlfriend, and it was me. I don't know what is real anymore. I couldn't believe that I was her, and I wouldn't have done nothing to hurt Michael. So I did the most logical thing I could think of and placed the gun in the side of my mouth, and then, bang. 3 months later, my therapist asked me why I shot myself, knowing that it will hurt you and your ex-partner severely. I told him that I had no idea what I was thinking. I thought Elizabeth was my one true love. I tried my best to make her happy, but it wasn't enough. Then her friend, Stacy, convinced Elizabeth that I wasn't good enough, all because I work from home and I was keeping her hostage in my house. I didn't care what Elizabeth did on the internet to make a living. I know times hard, but I thought that we could have made it work together. When I found out that Elizabeth cheated, I just didn't know how to cope, so I pleasured myself to Elizabeth's OF account. But that wasn't enough, so I decided to cut myself. And even when I decided to move on and start dating again, I couldn't get over what Elizabeth and Stacy did to me. So I just had a mental breakdown and thought shooting myself was the best way to escape. My therapist told me that I was lucky I didn't shoot anything vital, or that would have been a permanent escape. Then my therapist told me that it was no way to face your problems, but he was glad I was getting better. My therapist told me that this was my one and only session, but even so, I feel very optimistic about the future. My therapy session went so well, in fact, that I even recommended my old coworker Mickey to go see him. Oh, The therapist was named Doctor, because Mickey was going to marry someone he met in college, and he was getting very nervous about it. But at least someone I know found love, and I'm confident that I will also find love once again. My father's Scarecrow. I grew up on a farm out in the desolate wasteland known as Rupert, Idaho. I'm not sure what you know about Idaho, but I can tell you this. There are fields that stretch for as far as the eye can see, all across the state. We're a farm town, therefore, I inherited one of these fields when my parents tragically passed away in a car accident back in 2014. I'm not gonna bore you with the details, but the event took a huge toll on me. I went through a period of depression, a creeping darkness that seemed to follow me around like a black cloud. For the longest time, I struggled to find the strength to even leave my house. Bills wait for no man, however, and as time passed, those bills piled up. After receiving my final notice in regard to the mortgage, I finally mustered up the willpower to actually do something. I had to sell a few pieces of equipment in order to catch myself up, thus making the process that much more difficult. My dad had taught me pretty much everything I needed to know about tending to the fields. The tractor work, the planting, harvesting, yada, yada, yada. After selling the equipment, a lot of this work was done by hand. I'd spend hours in the fields, breaking my back to plant the crops by hand. It didn't affect me much though. If anything, it helped me keep my mind off of my parents' accident. I actually began to take pride in the work I was doing. Watching the crops sprout up through the soil, day by day, smelling the fresh scent of dew in the air every crisp October morning. It made me happy. As I'm sure you all know, with any good harvest, you're bound to have pesky little thieves sneaking into your field, stealing your payload. Crows would, in every sense of the word, desecrate portions of my crops. I tried bird netting, reflective tape, predator decoys. Nothing seemed to keep these rodents from stealing what I'd worked so hard to create. Eventually, fed up with the circumstance, I pulled out my dad's old scarecrow from the attic. I'd intentionally put off retrieving the old thing because, when I was a kid, it scared the life out of me. The way the arms and legs looked like shredded skin, the haunting face that had been drawn onto his potato sack head, it truly terrified me. I even found myself a little uncomfortable with the thing as I was retrieving it. The thing that grounded me and brought me back to a more adult mind state was the fact that the scarecrow wore my father's old flannel and jeans. It felt like having a part of him, guarding over the field for me. It got the job done too. Of all the methods, this was the one that kept the crows away. What were once black squawking clouds dwindled down to distant echoes, far from the field. Not only did the crows disband, it seemed as though every rodent in the field had completely ceased at trying to even attempt to steal crops from me. This cut my work in half, and all that was left was for me to harvest and distribute the corn. One day, whilst walking through the fields, I noticed something strange. A crow, decapitated, lying in the middle of the crop. That wasn't it though. As I continued walking, I found carcass after carcass, each one decapitated and mangled. The bodies seemed to create a distinct path, one that spiraled and snaked around the length of the cornfield. I followed, completely astonished. As I drew deeper into the field, the scent of rotting flesh began to permeate my nostrils. I could hear flies buzzing just ahead of me. Thousands of tiny wings, flapping against rotting air. I continued to follow, and the trail led me directly to my scarecrow, and I could finally see where the scent was coming from. Before me, perched upon wooden stake that pieced the ground, hang my father. His flannel was decaying and ripped to shreds, and his jeans were now stained with layers upon layers of deep, crimson blood. His body had been filleted, revealing his rotting internal organs that dangled from his torso, blackened by sun exposure. Scabs and lesions covered his arms and oozed with pus. Perhaps the worst part of all, however, was the look he gave me. He had this look of absolute detestation plastered to his peeling face. The emotion lay entirely in his eyes. His jaw had been dislocated, nearly destroyed entirely, and dangled limply from the right side of his face. His cheeks had sunken and rotted, revealing lines of black teeth beyond the shredded flesh. Before him lay a pile of dozens upon dozens of dead rodents, being feasted upon by flies and maggots. My eyes stung with sweat and tears, and all I could do was stare at the man. His head swiveled left to right, scanning the entire field. My next course of action was the only thing I could think to do. I turned around and exited the field. I went back to my safe house, and I stared at a wall. Maybe for hours. I prayed. I begged God for his mercy, but no reply came. The next day, my father still hung, perched upon the stake, scanning the field. The scent of rot was almost unbearable now, and I could see more piles of dead animals scattered across my field. I fell to my knees, and I cried. This is my life now. The crops don't exist anymore. They have been replaced by a deep sludge of soft, decaying corpses that coat the ground, all watched over by my father, who stays perched on his stake, scanning for any crow or rodent that dare enter his field. The odd dog with the blue spots. Michael hadn't slept through the night in months. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it that strange, wrong-looking dog. White fur, blue spots, a head just slightly too big, movements just slightly too human. It didn't bark or growl, it just stood there, staring with glassy eyes that didn't reflect any light. At first, the dreams were rare. A glimpse in the corner of some strange place, an alley, a forest, a playground that seemed to stretch forever. But lately, the dog came every night. Sometimes it followed him, patting softly on hands that bent like fingers. Other times it just waited for him to notice it before smiling, lips peeling back too far. He'd seen therapists, tried medications, cut out caffeine, even burned sage once on a coworker's suggestion. Nothing helped. The worst part wasn't the dreams themselves, it was the feeling that lingered afterward. That crawling sensation just beneath his skin, like he'd brought something back with him. And now, every night when he got into bed, that same thought pressed on him. I've seen that dog before. He didn't know where or when, but the thought made his stomach turn. It came strongest, just as he was drifting off. That edge between waking and sleep, when the world felt thinner. That night was no different. He brushed his teeth, turned off the lights, and lay down. Eyes fixed on the dark ceiling. The ticking of the hallway clock felt louder than usual, every second punctuating his restless thoughts. It's just a dream, he told himself. It's just stress. The words barely formed before the edges of the room began to blur and dissolve into something else entirely. Michael rubbed his eyes and sighed. The clock on his nightstand glowed, 2:47 a.m. The hum of the ceiling fan filled the quiet apartment, but it did little to settle the crawling unease that had become a nightly ritual. The white dog with blue spots its too smooth movements. Its human eyes behind the mask lingered behind his eyelids whenever he blinked. He turned onto his side, pulling the blanket up to his shoulders. Just sleep, he told himself. Don't think about it tonight. Eventually, the weight of exhaustion pulled him under. When he opened his eyes again, he was sitting upright on his living room couch. The air felt thick and heavy, as if it hadn't been breathed in years. The only light came from the old TV set across the room, the one he hadn't owned in over a decade. Its screen flickered gray and white, whispering static that crawled under his skin. On the floor, just below the screen, lay a VHS tape. Its black plastic casing was scuffed and sticky, with fingerprints. Written across the label in uneven blue marker were the words, "Spotty Fun featuring blooper." Michael stared at it for a long time. His heartbeat filled the silence between the static's hisses. Against his better judgment, he crouched down and picked it up. The tape felt warm, like it had been sitting in the sundae. The VCR beneath the TV had already been powered on, its little red light glowing steadily, waiting. Michael hesitated for only a second before sliding the tape inside. The screen jumped, the static deepened, and then the image began to form. Children's laughter warped, slow, and stretched, played under a jingle that sounded like something from an old public access cartoon. The colors bled and shifted, shapes flickering between smiles and teeth. Then it appeared. The white dog with blue spots, head tilted too far to one side, waved stiffly at the camera. Its costume looked wrong fabric, sagging in places, seams splitting around the jaw where something pink glistened underneath. "Hiya, kids!" a distorted voice chimed, though the dog's mouth didn't move. "It's me, Blooper. Ready for some spotty fun?" The laughter came again, only this time, Michael realized it wasn't from children. It was from the same voice, multiplied, layered, echoing. The dog began to dance or convulse in jagged motions, its limbs bending too sharply. Michael hit stop on the remote. Nothing happened. The TV hissed louder, and Blooper froze mid-motion, staring straight out of the screen. Then, the picture blinked out. He sat there for a moment, the silence pressing in, before lying back down on the couch, willing himself to wake up. That was when the static returned. It began softly, a faint whisper of sound, but soon it roared through the living room, rattling picture frames. The TV's glow pulsed, flaring bright white, then dimming again, like a heartbeat. Michael sat up just in time to see something pushing from the inside of the screen. The glass flexed outward, warping as fingers know, paws pressed through. The static burst into a scream as Blooper crawled free, its movements wet and deliberate. Its plastic snout hung open, revealing rows of teeth that didn't belong in a costume. It turned its head toward him. "Time for fun, Michael," it rasped in a voice that wasn't human. "I can't stop drinking blood," pretty much what the title says. Firstly, let me make this clear. I am not a vampire. That term is so overused, and I do not wish to be associated with it. I guess I'll start with how this habit began. See, I used to intern at a hospital. I aspired to be a surgeon, and quite often I'd be right there in the room with the professionals, watching them operate and learning the methods. I'm not sure where exactly I began to develop this lust, but I do know it started with the blood bags. I'd be intently paying attention to the surgeon's procedures, taking notes, with my eyes fixated on their careful hands and precise incisions. The way that the blood rose to the surface of their skin, pooling slightly before being cleaned away. I couldn't help but notice it. It gleamed under the surgical lamp, creating this brilliant sparkle that twinkled and danced. Instances such as these, the ones where I'd find the abstract beauty in the very thing that kept our bodies operational. Our own substance, our own holy liquid. They made me curious, very curious. I'd think to myself about how miraculous it all was, how incredibly fascinating the human body was. After a number of these sessions, my curiosity grew to abnormal proportions. I couldn't stop thinking about how precious the blood was, how we're created with just the perfect amount to keep us alive. Lose too much, you die. Take in too much, you die. As I said, this all started with the blood bags. During my time spent in the hospital, I managed to sneak out a few of them, as well as some needles and collection tubes. Over the course of about a week, I'd say, I had successfully obtained the things I needed and created my own in-home setup. In my curiosity, I began taking my own blood. I'd cook myself a full-course meal beforehand, including lots of red meat, water, spinach, fish, and eggs. All things to help my body replenish after losing blood. Once that was completed, I'd set myself up, stick the needle in, and wait for the bag to fill. Everything was clean. I'm not a moron. I knew what could come of having unsterile equipment. CMOT. Plus, I'd limit myself to only doing this once every 72 hours. After about 7 sessions or so, I'd gathered myself quite the collection of blood bags that I kept in my meat freezer. I'd go to the hospital, as normal, every time. And I'd look just as put together as anyone else in the facility. However, I'd began to slip into my addiction. I started stealing more and more bags, robbing the hospital of more and more equipment. One day I was called into the director's office. She told me she knew I'd been stealing and showed video evidence of me sneaking away with 2 handfuls of syringes. I was asked to leave, of course, being an intern and all. So I did. I went home. Devastated. I couldn't believe that I had been so stupid, so careless. I couldn't bring myself to look at my in-home setup when I walked through the door. I simply waltzed past it before plopping down at the dining room table and cracking open a beer. Then 2, then 6. After my 8th beer, my judgment was incredibly clouded. I opened the meat freezer and began analyzing the collection I had built. Life's most precious liquid, huh? I thought to myself, cracking open another can. That's where humanity's got it wrong. This is life's most precious liquid. I grabbed one of the bags and felt it in my hand. It was so much lighter than I'd remembered. How about a toast? I asked aloud. To my blood! I stumbled to the microwave before popping the bag in it for 45 seconds. I waited, swaying back and forth, for the beep to come ringing out from the machine. Once it did, I opened the microwave and the entire kitchen was flooded with the scent of copper. Hooray for science! Am I right, fellas? I asked no one. Using a steak knife, I tore the plastic and poured the crimson liquid into a glass. Steam rose from the cup and the aroma punctured my nostrils. Hesitant at first, I took a small sip, then a gulp. Then, before I knew it, I was chugging the stuff, my head cocked back 90 degrees as to get the last little drop from the cup before I sat it down gently on the counter. No nausea, no headache, just stillness. My feet were planted firmly on the ground, and my face was no longer burning hot and red. I felt whole. I woke up the next morning with no hangover, nor lack of memory. I knew exactly what I'd done, and I wanted to do it more. This became the new ritual, and every night, after returning home from my new fast food job, this was the one thing that kept me positive, the one thing that made me feel normal and welcomed. Something that didn't belong to anyone but myself, and I took solace in it. I wouldn't say I seriously can't stop, but I will say it would be like a spike to the heart. This is the closest I've ever felt with myself, and the last thing I want to do is ruin that. Thank you for watching Nightmare Proof. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the nightmares alive. Have a story of your own? Send it in, and you may hear it here next time. Until then, sleep well, if you can.